welcome to this week's Green Jeans episode. My name's Maya Van Rossum. I am one of your co-hosts, and I am joined by my wonderful daughter and co-host,
Annika Van Rossum.
Annika, can you explain what is the approach that we take here on Green Jeans? You're better at it than I am.
So we are a mother-daughter duo podcast. My mother is the leader of two environmental nonprofits, Delaware Riverkeeper Network and Green Amendments for the Generations. And I am currently finishing my third year in law school. I guess it's not majoring, specializing in environmental law. So I am what we call budding activist, and my mother is a lifelong activist. And so we talk about environmental and social justice issues through a generational lens, activist lens. That.
Perfect. And, we have to give kudos where kudos is due. Annika has actually been a lifelong activist herself. She has been very engaged with my Delaware Riverkeeper Network advocacy, fighting for the beautiful Delaware River and its entire watershed for literally the entirety of her life, which you will have heard, hopefully, because you've listened to previous episodes. And since I started the Green Amendments for the Generations movement, Annika has been very, very engaged in that from day one, including now having just wrapped up a semester for her law school, helping to advance the Green Amendment movement in the state of New Mexico, which is really exciting, where we've got a powerful movement. So I just want to sing your praises, Annika, because, well, I don't think you sang them enough.
Well, I want to sing your praises because, as I always say, most people don't get to meet their heroes, and I call mine mom.
Oh, that's so sweet. So we have started, we've tried to, because I actually heard on another podcast, one of my favorites, Cognitive Dissonance, which is more of a political podcast, very funny. If you haven't heard it, it's well worth a listen, but they are not shy with their language. So just make sure that you're okay with salty language, and either for yourself or for your kids, and be prepared for that. But it really is superb. Anyway, on one of their recent episodes that I listened to, they talked about how fact checking actually has proved to be a very valuable thing for people, that it really does make a difference when you have folks that fact check. So we decided from that moment on that we were going to try to do a fact check as part of Green Jeans. But our fact checks were a little more free with the definition of what a fact check is, which I find fun. Sometimes it's straight on, sometimes it's a little bit coming in from the side end. And I would say that today's fact check is coming in a little bit from the side end. So today's fact check is about this great sweatshirt that Annika gave me for Christmas. It's very exciting. I'm going to stand up the sweatshirt so people can see it if you're watching, but otherwise for those listening, it says, "Hey, colonizer." And so the fact check is, right, and there were some extended family that were at our Christmas celebration who later said, she's a white lady. Can she wear that sweatshirt? And so the fact check question is, Annika, is it okay for me to wear a sweatshirt that says, "Hey, colonizer"?
The answer is absolutely yes. So for those who don't know, this is merch from a TikTok creator. His @ is @ModernWarrior. His name is Lance Sozy. He is of Dene descent, and he is Dene. And so Lance is very educated, is, as I just said, Dene. And so Lance basically goes on TikTok and finds all these videos where white people or colonizers, racist people, whatever, are saying all this stuff that are incorrect history, whitewashing history, offensive, racist, whatever. And he stitches the video. So it's the little clip of the video. And then Lance goes, "Hey, colonizer." So, and then provides a very accurate, the accurate history of the United States, and corrects people and calls them out on their BS and all that stuff. And it's very educational. Of course, there's so many people that are like, "You're saying colonizer, isn't that racist?" Okay, no, it is not, because white people are colonizers. We come from colonizing history. That's just what it is. And so I got it because I was even curious. I consider us allies of the Native American community. I think we do whatever we can to lend our voices, but also know the appropriate. I think, Mom, you've always done a great job of, standing in the back too and being like, I'm going to make sure the people who need to be up front get up front and like support them. I have to talk about really when we were at the New Mexico Capitol and all the Native American leaders were there. And so of course, the like president of the governors got a whole standing ovation. And then the next important Native American leader who came up, who wasn't like the president, nobody stood up for him except for you to give him a standing ovation. And then every other important Native American leader afterwards got a standing ovation. And I think it's because you were like, guys, like everybody's important, duh. But anyways, so of course the question is like, can white people, can you wear it? Because a lot of people who like Lance, Modern Warrior, like, I want to support you. I want to wear your merch, but like, I want to be respectful and make sure like, am I wearing this? Is it a problem? And so there was a comment I saw before I got it for you. It said, can I wear a Hey Colonizer sweatshirt if I'm white? I don't want to be disrespectful or appropriate the message. And he responded, said, absolutely. The only flack you'll get will be from the people you don't want to associate with, which is true. If you're racist, we don't want to associate with you. So if you go to @ModernWarrior on TikTok, he has Hey Colonizer sweatshirts, t-shirts, leggings. It's dope. It's awesome. I am getting a tank top in the mail right now for myself, but it's very cool. It just shows there's like a lot of ways to be an ally. And like, yeah, white people were from colonizers. Like, you don't have to be. There's always a thing like the history you love and the part of history that you want to keep secret usually are one and the same, and you can't pick one over the other. Like, you have to take it all. So yeah.
So I think that is a great fact check, and I love my sweatshirt, and I love that message, and I'm really glad for the opportunity to share that, because I think it has meaning in a lot of spaces, not just with the Hey Colonizer call out and sweatshirt. And I'm also really pleased to raise up another key leader in the social justice movement, in the Native American movement, where there has been so much abuse because of colonizing and colonizers. So, and I do appreciate your recognizing what happened in New Mexico. I like to believe that other people saw it too. I like to believe that I inspired others to show equal respect to all Native American leaders, but who knows, they might have just done it on their own.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure some people don't know what to do, but I think you did the right thing. And yeah, but so go follow @ModernWarrior on TikTok. He's great. It's also like, it's a lot of accurate information. I've learned a lot of like the real history of the US through what he's shared. So it's also educational, but it's great and I love it. So I think our guest, Rachel, who we're having on today, is ready to come into the room.
All right, so why don't we bring Rachel in?
Yes.
Hey, Rachel, how are you?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good morning.
Well, we are just super excited that you were able to join us for our podcast, Rachel. For those who have yet to know about you and be inspired by you, I just want to say Rachel is an amazing, amazing leader in the environmental movement, in the social justice movement, taking on so many important challenges, from fracking to pipelines, and now to dealing with the issue of eco-anxiety, which is what Rachel is here to talk with us about. So we are just so grateful, Rachel, that you were able to join us. And
thank you.
I always, like to let people introduce themselves, because,
Sure.
it's who better to tell your story than you. So now that people know how much Annika and I admire you, and you are well deserving of admiration, we wanted to give you the floor to tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what brings you to this moment and joining us on this show.
Yeah, sure. I really appreciate being invited. Thank you so much for this podcast. I think it's just such a great idea. Because of the intergenerational work I've been doing ever since I was a student, I really appreciate that you exist and that you're picking up the baton, so to speak, Annika,
Thank you.
because this is really about community, right? And so I always share that I'm a community architect. I've been an activist for a long time, and I think I have not really called myself that, but I have been. No matter what I'm doing, I'm an activist. And so, so my background is that I have a huge heart, and I actually am wearing it on my shirt today. You can see. I know
Oh,
you guys like my
cute.
shirts, girls. So yeah, I really wanted to kind of speed up because I know there's so much to talk about today. Um, so I've been able to make a lot of good changes in my community, in my state, in my country, facing the various systemic issues we are facing today, be them, of extremism with respect to war and peace, or health and sickness, racism and sexism, and of course, ecological doom, which we are experiencing right now. So long story short, I figured out that I had to be of use in this moment. And so 2019, I had seen a flyer in my voluntary escapades for veterans, which is something I'm very passionate about still, and still work on actively today. And I saw an advertisement for a group for people who are coping with eco-anxiety. And so I was able to see that term and immediately feel that resonated with me, and that I had to do something about it. I know I heard some of your podcasts before, your holiday podcast. You spoke about some traditions that you hold, and something in my family that kind of strikes a chord in me is what we were told and what we feel is God only helps people who help themselves. And so we have always lived that way. So I thought, this is the best way I can help myself. I was already going to explore green infrastructure training in the winter of 2020. And so I simultaneously signed up for this eco-anxiety support group to see where, again, I could be most of use, knowing I have all this passion, knowing I have all this expertise in what I do, and seeing results. I knew in order to be good, be a good human being and a good mother, that was really what, and again, really appreciate this podcast. This is what really helped me to not look away from the help that I knew I needed because of the feelings that I had felt, because these issues are huge. And when you're looking at them day in and day out, it makes sense that you need help to reckon with that. And so I just felt so grateful that this term existed, and I was so curious to see what a support group for this might look like. And so that's kind of how I came back to being in this space, was going through that actual process. And so throughout beginning that process, a job opened up, and as I looked at myself and wanting to be of use, I thought, well, I have to be of use in this way. And so while I am the public policy and justice organizer for Water Spirit, and that is my role, Water Spirit is a ministry of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Peace, and they are the offerers of this eco-anxiety support group that I would find in fall of 2019, before the whole world would sort of shift. And so yeah, I am in that role. That's the work that I love and I do, and I'm able to do it because of the contemplative breaks that I'm focusing in on, specifically with respect to meditation. But that's not all I am. So I had to really look into myself, my full self, and figure out what I could do to make sure that I'm not feeling like I'm not doing enough, which is something that a lot of people, especially activists, feel a lot of the time.
Can I like snaps to that, yeah. Which is so, because I'm like, I hate doing the whole like, well, I know I'm doing more than like the guy who's like not protecting the environment. But anyways, can I ask you, Rachel, because I think so people who may not know, like, and with this support group, that's also
Right.
The fact that we've come to the place where we need a support group hurts my head too. But like, what is the definition of eco-anxiety or climate anxiety for people that haven't heard of it before?
Yeah, so yeah, let's dive in now. So what is eco-anxiety? It can be defined in various ways, but I'll give you a few today. So the American Psychological Association defines it as chronic fear of environmental doom. A gentleman, his PhD, Glenn Albrecht, who's written about this a lot, he calls it the generalized sense that the ecological foundations of existence are in the process of collapse. Climate anxiety, eco-grief, eco-depression, eco-trauma, soulstalgia, you may have heard, pre-traumatic stress. I don't like to say disorder, it's just pre-traumatic
Mhm.
stress. And honestly, at this point, it's post-traumatic stress. So I struggle with that even being a thing, because people are experiencing this, especially frontline communities and poorer communities who have been more vulnerable to experiencing climate extreme weather this whole time. They're experiencing it at a different level. And I want to explain, because I said nostalgia, I didn't define it. So you've heard of nostalgia.
Yeah.
Solstalgia, so being homesick, being separated from a loved home. And solstalgia is the distress that is produced by environmental change impacting on people while they are directly connected to their home environment. And
Wow.
so that's where we get into, and I know you had asked for some examples, and I'll go through those, but where the post-traumatic stress of it is affecting people. It's not pre, it's post, because in New Jersey especially, I know we've seen a big uptick in people signing up for the support group because of during the time of wildfire season. In the region where I live, I'm zooming in from occupied Lenni Lenape land, called Monmouth County, New Jersey. We have floods. So, lots of rain events, lightning, thunder, things like that will trigger a lot of these emotions. And so I don't think I I really explained
No,
that.
no, I think you did. I mean, I
Okay.
think it's very striking. And
Okay.
as Annika said, I
We're
think
just
it's,
processing. That's like, it's just
yeah,
so.
It's a big
you
one.
know, and Rachel, I want to ask you something mother to mother. You and I were actually doing an email exchange where you were just really emphasizing the power of motherhood and the power of mothers, and how mothers never get any downtime. Now, that's not to say that there's not tremendous power in fathers, right? And other parents, right?
That's right.
Parents of all kinds really are always picking up the mantle, picking up the pieces when they have to. And we can all walk in others' shoes as best we can, and empathize as best we can. But I personally feel like there is something different about being a mother, and that role, whoever you are.
Right.
And when you and I had a conversation, I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, because I've had
Please
this
do. Go for it.
conversation with other friends, is really thinking about, do I want to have children? Do I actually want to bring children into this world, facing this future? And I will be honest with you, when I had my daughter, when I had Annika, and when I had my son, Vim, certainly there were a lot of environmental issues, and I was already full on into my environmental activism and my worry for the earth and my worry for communities. And we were talking about climate change or global warming, but we were not talking about and facing and experiencing real time climate catastrophe, a climate crisis. And so my thought processes about having children and the environment were more about the footprint, bringing the footprint of additional people into this world. But talking with my friends who are thinking about having children, who, whether right now or in recent years, they're thinking about it differently. It's not just about the footprint, it's about, what will these children experience? I think about that now for Annika and Vim.
Right.
But when I was going to have them, that wasn't part of my thought process. And you sort of expressed that was actually part of your thought process. And I was just wondering if you could share that from the perspective of a parent and a mother and somebody thinking about actually physically bringing children into this world.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. And it's something that comes up a lot in this generation, the younger generation coming up. It's much more clear than it was even for me when I had these very real, huge questions and frankly, reluctance. Really, very, very clearly, I had thought about the footprint, and I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think when I was in graduate school, I thought about that, and I would think, okay, future generations. But then I thought, wait a minute, I didn't expect to fall. I fell in love, got married during graduate school. I didn't expect to do that. I was going to marry the work. I was just going to do this. I was going to make sure that this planet was livable for every human being, for every kid, no matter whose kid they are. They're all my kids, right? And I understand that feeling. And I wasn't a mother yet, but I had such a mother. And so I have felt the need to care for community for a long time. And my grandmother too. And so it kind of went against everything I thought in my head. I remember this very vivid moment, and I've written about this, where I was at a rally. It was actually in the fall, so it wasn't too cold outside. And I was thinking about, and it was a rally. It was called Shale Gas Outrage, in contrast to Shale Gas Insight, which was a for-profit sort of natural gas corporate technical event that was happening in one of the office buildings in Philadelphia. And I just went around and I thought, well, maybe if I ask all the different faith leaders, should I have kids? Because I'm thinking, wow, we're not going to have enough water. We're not going to have enough food. How am I going to handle this? How's my husband going to handle this? How am I going to have a job? And where are we going to live? And are we going to drown? And all these things I was thinking then. And now they're much more prevalent, and it makes more sense to me that younger people are thinking about this. I got, the advice that I got was, especially from Dr. Sandra Steingraber, which was, we need more people like you, and that they're fun to make. And there's something that I think you'll also appreciate, Annika. I think her name is Mary Tempest Williams. She promotes pleasure activism. So really, how is this making you actually feel better by doing this work? And so I think, that's something for everyone to explore. And there's so many resources to be shared, but ultimately I still am kind of in shock that I did it. My daughter's 9.5 now. And my other one is 5, and she's in school, and we have a dog in between. And I don't know. I had so much love for my husband and for the idea that maybe we could turn the ship around. And as I've shared with you, Maya, I can only see a future, when I really think about it, as a green revolution. I see that. That's the only way. Like, if I had kids, this is how it has to happen, right? I finally decided. My body did go through all of that, which was hugely impactful in so many ways. And I think now, because I am a mother out on the other side, I have no patience for the urgency that we feel, and the idea that people younger than me are not having kids. It makes me really upset. It makes me really sad, and it made me sad when I was thinking about it. I know it makes other people sad. It makes people who are older in the eco anxiety support groups. They're talking about this too, about their kids who are deciding to not have kids, and it's everywhere. It's all over the globe, and it makes sense when we see statistic. I know you had I share this all the time. I know, Annika, you had asked if there were any statistics or research. The Lancet Planetary Health Study, and I'll share the link with you, just reported last, I guess it was November, that 75% of young people are grappling with eco-anxiety, as I had defined before. And it makes sense. So it makes sense that, unfortunately, it is the reality that when you're faced with, can I handle this? Not only mentally, can I handle it financially? Can I handle it, where we are geographically? Then on the mental piece, you really need to be able to handle that. And so it's a big ask for young people today who see so much of their future unforeseeable. I don't blame them. And I think, how could you almost, unless you are so sure and you are so in love, because these things happen. And again, you don't know, how it's going to happen. You may fall in love. You may end up having kids. You don't know. But it is, unfortunately, it's strategically smart for them to decide that. And it's one of the, I think, indicators, thankfully, frankly, for people to pay attention to this issue. This is happening. Actually, the Pope just mentioned something about this yesterday. He said something to the lines along the lines of, having a pet as a child is one thing, but we really need to focus on humanity and growing humanity. So I thought that was also very interesting.
Yeah, I saw that headline. I mean, just to what you guys are talking about too, I saw a group of my friends from college who I haven't seen in a while, and whenever we've done the what do you want your wedding to be, and I don't actively have a partner, so kids aren't in my cards right now, obviously, but when we were
not necessarily you don't have to have a partner to have a kid.
True.
Right?
Okay.
And you can adopt, and you can do all
I
kinds
was adopted also, by the way.
Okay, so this was part of, I'm finishing law school, so we'll get that and then we can but
priorities.
Yeah, priorities first. But I had said, I just remember I was like, well, if I decide to have kids, and my one friend literally was like, what do you mean if? I was like, well, I've been going back and forth on it lately, and the question, and at first it was like, are you okay? Like, is this like a health concern? I'm like, no, like, because I'd always talked about I wanted to have kids, because I know for me, like, I had such a great relationship with my Oma, and like obviously with my mom, and like so I've always kind of been like, I want to have my own kids to like share that with. I'm like, I think I'd be a cool mom. But
Yes.
like, but now it really like, and I actually did. I had I was in a meeting with a legislator too, and they had left the meeting and they weren't so supportive of the Green Amendment, and their reasoning was so bad, and I literally started crying. And two things I said to the other legislators in the room who were supportive was, it's like, people in my generation are actually getting diagnosed with climate anxiety. So I don't understand why they don't have this urgency. And I said, and I have now decided that I'm probably not going to have kids if this doesn't get fixed. And it's like, because, yeah, like you're saying, it's so, people don't think about that. And it's really like, you have to make these decisions. And my friend too, who I talked to, lives in New York City. And he was just saying, he's like, yeah, I get stressed out pretty much every day when he has to go through Times Square and he sees the doomsday clock. He's like, I have to stare at that every day. And he's like, I get the messaging, but like, he's like, I get it. He's like, I get the doomsday's on. Put that in front of the White House, put that in front of every government office. He's like, everyone should be installed with a doomsday clock. Cause he's like, we all get it. And we're all making decisions every day because we get it. But the people who have the power don't get it. And they need to stare at that clock every single day.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that to the legislator. Go ahead, Maya.
Yeah, no, you finish that thought and then I'll bring in my other
Yeah, I
thought.
was just gonna say that should make people so alarmed and make every single alarm bell go off, every single red flag just wave, because that is so the reaction that you unfortunately got was just so incorrect and such a failure to your generation. But I think, and I would say, and I think when you speak about that more and more, and as you get more comfortable speaking about that, say it loud, say it proud, because that is it is, like I just said, 75%, as you just said, your friend going to work every single day. We're all in this together, but the younger generation is definitely experiencing it at a much more acute level than has ever been seen before.
Now, our friend to the show and friend to our activism and friend to Rachel and I and Annika, Karen Faraday, talked in a recent episode about how she brought a climate countdown clock into a public hearing and was just sitting in a chair holding it up for legislators in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who were making the wrong decisions when it comes to the climate. And she got thrown out. She got thrown out for holding the clock, for showing them, you know, the fast dwindling time to address this issue. So that's interesting. But the one thing I do want to give voice to, right, for people listening, right, is there really are, we're talking about when it comes to making the decision not to have children, we're talking a specific group of people. These are people who would like to have children, but are choosing not to, or considering not to, or actually are having abortions because of the fear of future climate. Now, there are many, many people who choose not to have children for a gazillion other reasons. Many of them are in my life circle. And I find it not just striking, but I do also find it offensive when I see these people, and even at my time, in my time, when I wasn't positive I was going to want to have children, and that everybody presumes, not everybody, many people presume that everybody wants to have children. And if, like you said, Annika, you're suggesting you may not want to have children, oh, what's wrong? What's wrong with you physiologically, or what's wrong with you psychologically? There are many, many good reasons not to want to have children. Having to do with the climate, having not to do with the climate. Maybe it's economics. Maybe it's just personally you don't want kids. And that's all okay. So I want to give voice to that, because I have found myself very often throughout my life being in a room with a friend, a colleague, or just a stranger who verbalizes that they have chosen not to have children, and they get this weird negative response, like something is wrong or wrong with them. And I just want to lend voice to, none of us here on this show think that is perfectly appropriate and acceptable and good on you.
Absolutely.
But we're just giving voice to that other piece of it, people who would like to have children or have thought they would like to have children and now are deciding, again, either that they will not get pregnant or that they are going to have an abortion because they have found themselves pregnant when they did not want to be. And they're making that choice because of eco-anxiety, right?
Right. They wanted kids their whole life, like Annika, perfect example, right? And you're having these questions and you're not alone. There are so many people, again, just from the groups that I've partaken in, these questions are going between spouses who are already married and one is on board and the other is not so sure. And like, this is happening. So you're not alone.
And it's an important nexus. I just want to say it's an important nexus between the issue of climate, environment, and abortion rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Climate rights,
exactly.
Environmental rights, and abortion rights. And there's really an important nexus there. And people need to, for many, many reasons, including environmental reasons, to have their constitutional right to access a free or a safe and healthy abortion. And it should be free.
Absolutely.
Because that is their choice, and that constitutional right needs to be maintained. It needs to be protected. Sorry, Annika, you were going to say.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, so two things. I have a statement that I have another question for Rachel, because I'm so curious about these support groups. But sure. This is why I'm big on green amendments, people, especially young people listening, because I have started to say, I'm like, this is like a constitutional legal right we have never seen before, because it considers the current future generation and those yet to be born, those who are going to be born by people who want them to be born, not people forcing people to birth them.
That's
but like
great.
Those who are not yet on this earth, who are going to be on this earth, who want a healthy planet, like they have a right. And we have no other law in our Bill of Rights anywhere in this nation that stands up for those yet. So that's why if you like green amendments, people, go do it. But I'm so curious.
www.forthegenerations.org.
That. Rachel, I was so curious. Like before the show, I was just reading, and it was like I saw all these articles that were like 5 tips to deal with your climate anxiety, and like that. I'm reading this like, the 5 ways to lose like fat, or like the 5 ways you can clear your skin out in the new year. And I'm like, what have we come to? I'm so curious what these like support groups talk about and how you deal with such a heavy topic.
Yeah. And I will say, I so appreciate the question. And before that, I just want to echo the importance of the constitutional amendment and constitutional rights, and just women's rights in general. I will say my daughter is one of those people who's decided she doesn't want to have kids, and that may change, but she has since she was 6, been very engaged on abortion rights and is very much paying attention. And now she's 9.5. So now things are really, really getting real. And, I just always say the children are watching.
Yeah.
And they're very, very, very involved and engaged. So I wanted to just share that the nonprofit I work with, Water Spirit, hosts these support groups and has done 10 of them. They're 10-week sessions modeled off of the Good Grief Network. The Good Grief Network builds personal resilience and empowerment while strengthening community ties to combat despair, inaction, and eco-anxiety on the collective level. Basically, metabolize your heavy feelings resulting from systems breakdown in these groups. And so the co-founders of Good Grief Network are Laura Schmidt and Amy Lewis Rowe. And they both were also very close to the environmental movement. Laura, I know, was studying animals and animal science and just species extinction, and really got curious about what keeps people who are doing this work in for the long haul. How can there be a sustainability of activists and scientists, anyone looking at climate change closely, seeing the reality? How can they be sustained? And so, Blair Nelson, who's the executive director of Water Spirit, came into her executive director role just a few years ago, seeing immediately that Sandy is a huge trigger for people around this area, and seeing that the mental health aspect of what Water Spirit was able to provide through meditation and through other just contemplative, certainly seasonal celebrations, which Water Spirit's been doing for over 20 years, have really helped people. So she had seen Good Grief Network and basically picked it up and ran with it, offered it and saw people come out right away, because where we live, we're right by the Jersey Shore. Sandy, I mean, this is Sandy land. And this is still something that triggers people. People still are talking about it all the time. And again, whenever it rains, whenever it floods. So, so in these groups, which are 10 weeks long and, focus on 10 steps, it's basically, they're a container for people to be brave in feeling these feelings. This is not therapy. But it is a community. And so it's not like masochistic, let's all feel our feelings for no reason. It's necessary to move through our feelings, these heavy feelings that we're soaking in activist and activism information, key frontline data and environmental racism. This affects our bodies for real. And so the ability to have these safe, brave containers to feel your feelings, say the things you would maybe not ever say, or, maybe somebody, my husband was saying this, maybe you say it and you don't get somebody rolling their eyes at you, or like a look, like you were saying, even just about that. That is so helpful to people. And we've seen, and myself I've experienced, just to have this space and to have this community. And so there are 10 steps. And the first of all of these ends up being an informational meeting, really just to help get people comfortable with how the meetings are going to be run. They are, we don't grieve in this country, right? And so this offers some ritual to this type of grief. And that is, again, it's working. It's doing a really good job for anyone who's capable of seeing it and partaking wherever you can. And so that's step 0. It's an informational meeting. So the steps are, if I may read them. Step 1, accept the severity of the predicament. And so we really have to come to that acceptance, right? And that is hard. But if we do it together, it's easier. Step 2, practice being with uncertainty. We have a lot of uncertainty today, especially with respect to COVID. We've been able to see a lot more uncertainty and have to deal with that. How are we practicing that? Step 3, honoring my mortality and the mortality of all. Step 4, do inner work, which is very, very important, and something that, I mean, I've had some therapists throughout the years, and I knew that one had told me, when we deal with our feelings now, they'll come out in your 30s if you don't deal with them appropriately. And that is true. So I really appreciate that piece. Step 5, develop awareness of biases and perception. Step 6, practice gratitude, witness beauty, and create connections. Step 7, take breaks and rest. Always a very hard thing to do for activists who are just always active. Step 8, grieve the harm I have caused. Step 9, show up. And then step 10, reinvest into meaningful efforts. And I want to say that if being a burnout activist is a meaningful effort and that works for you, that's okay. So we're not prescribing, if that's what makes you tick, great. But that's not for everyone. And so, we've seen in these groups from step 0 to step 10, people really come out of their shells. People really just, again, being able to process these huge feelings for the first time with people who you trust is really, it's really liberating. And there is not enough mental health expertise in this area yet. And I will share, there is a I think it's called Climate Psychology Alliance. We can share that with you. So if people are experiencing these feelings and want to find somebody who's going to take their problems seriously or their issues seriously, which this is, that's a good resource, because something I've found, not personally, thankfully, because my therapist is great, but it took me a while to find them. So I would say do your due diligence and don't ever settle for somebody that's not a good fit for you. But I have been seeing that therapists are unfortunately giving bad advice to people experiencing eco-anxiety. Again, this is a very new phenomena in terms of the mental health piece of it. So there are more programs for, again, students who are interested in helping in this way. And if you are focusing on mental health, think about maybe focusing on this, because there's a huge need for this help that is just not out there right now. So.
Yeah, wow. I guess we may have lost Maya for a second, but that's fine.
That's okay.
We can chat. Wow,
Yeah.
that's just insane to me. I mean, it was like one of the tips, and the mortality thing is just like,
it's
wow, it's hard. I mean, that was one of the 5 tips was like, you may end up thinking about mortality, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And it's just like, it's so hard too, because I feel like so much my generation is always like, when people are stressed about like love or jobs or whatever, everyone's like, you're young, you have plenty of time. But so many people are like, yeah, the planet's dying. So
That is so unfortunate that people say that to you, and that is not true. And I'm obviously of the thought of, we only have this much time, let's do everything we can. But I would recommend that, and just from, again, my own experience and just from seeing others just benefit from this, I don't think taking an article, top 5 things to do, sitting with your own mortality by yourself, that is the scariest thing I could possibly imagine. So community, community, community. That's really what this offers. And then after these 10 steps are done, something that I've also seen, and even myself after going through, what do I do now? Well, but it's over. So there's a great platform, you may already know about it, called Mighty Networks. And so the
I haven't heard of it.
conversation, oh, it's really cool. So yeah, it's basically a platform where the conversation can continue to take place. And this is, the level of access, because it's virtual, people from all over the world are engaged in this and then are part of this community. So you can go through the 10 steps as many times as you'd like. It's whatever fits your schedule. Good Grief Network has on their website an array of opportunities all year round, that of facilitators who have been trained by them. So they're, whether you're in Europe or you're in Asia, or we've had people from all over the world, really, but especially in Canada, out west, Midwest, and then again, all different ages. We've had students, we've had grandmas, we've had, people who are super, super burnout activists, and people who just don't feel right, or who are working in politics and just see what they see in DC, and are needing that community. And so it's a wonderful thing to see the transformation. But yeah, there are so many different ways people experience eco-anxiety, and it is changing, and it depends on the person. So
that's just, yeah. I mean, without sharing like anyone's like too personal stories, like you
Sure.
said, like people have come out of their shell. Like, so if
Sure.
people are thinking about, like, oh wow, this really resonates with me, and like I really think I want to participate in one of these like groups, like, maybe like any benefits you've seen, or I guess like, what I'm saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've seen some people think, well, I feel like I should facilitate one of these groups. I feel like my community needs it. So some people are definitely stepping into that role and thinking, I'm not sure where I fit in the mental health space of this, but there's so much going on. I know it's wrong. Oh, maybe I can become a facilitator for this. And there are, it's something where, you take that meaningful action and decide what it's going to be for you. So maybe immediately it's one thing and it changes into something else. So I've seen, for instance, someone who's come in and been anxious, maybe even not on camera, but just then finally say, you know what, I'm going to talk to my friends about this, and we're going to have a conversation about how we're going to do something in the community to make a difference. But just even having those conversations with your friends, as obviously you've shared, you're talking with your friends. And I think just marketing 101, word of mouth is where things happen. So, taking that initiative, coming in very scared, and then being able to come out and say, you know what, I'm going to talk to everybody I know about this. That's a huge shift. That was a huge transformation. And then just, being a burnout activist and, studying the mental health pieces of this, going to an event was one thing that I saw somebody go after step 10, and actually put them back in the saddle, so to speak.
Wow.
And felt comforted and felt, and we were so proud of that person. Just wow, because that shows tremendous courage.
Yeah, that's
That's
beautiful.
all of this does.
Can I just ask you if you've heard this from anybody else in the support group? So as Annika and I have talked about, she asked me to express in one show, I have a personal belief system that when everybody is born, they are born with a very direct emotional heart, soul connection to the earth, and can hear the earth's joys and can hear the earth's pain. And that over their life, for some people, you know how when you hear a child cry incessantly, yes, you feel upset at first, and then over time you get irritated and you maybe even get angry, right? Because and so in this connection with the earth, that as the earth has expressed more and more pain, that people turn off emotionally. They can't handle it. They can't bear it. And those who respond to that pain with anger, they turn off those emotions, and then they actually turn on the earth and they frack it. And,
Right.
they rape and pillage the earth because they have taken that pain and transformed it into anger and rage at the earth, and then just, want to beat the crap out of it. Where there are other people who experience that pain and feel deep grief and sadness. And I know for myself that there are times when I do feel overwhelmed, and then I like turn off, like I can't feel my connection with the earth anymore. But then it comes back, right? Because I'm so sad that I've lost it. But I feel like my heart and my mind and my soul need to turn off to heal that, right? It's like when that baby's crying and you leave the room and you get a breath, and then you re-experience your love and you come back with your loving care, right? That I do the same. And I believe that there are many, many people like you and like Annika and like me that do that. You may all not have that emotional turnoff, but I experience that. And I think many people do. That's my personal belief system. But I had a couple of months ago, I was at our special forest in New York State. And I've had this before, but this one was particularly poignant. I just started crying. I felt so much sadness from the earth, and I just cried, and I cried incessantly. I couldn't stop. And actually, while I was in the process of doing that, at some point, I reached out to two dear colleagues and friends who are also activists. And I just expressed, I'm just out here in the forest crying. And do you know that they both came back? Because they were both, one of them was actually having that same emotional reaction, and the other was expressing that they too were feeling turmoil from the earth.
Wow.
And I'm just wondering if you've heard of that from others in the support group, or is that the kind of thing that people raise and share with one another?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, certainly moving experiences, whether sad or profoundly beautiful in nature, definitely people are sharing. I will share that a couple of people have said that they have had trees speak to them, which I thought was very interesting. And I remain ever open to that. And I so appreciate you sharing that. I remember actually this past summer, I took a break and I went camping with my family, glamping actually, to the New Jersey side of right where around where I went to sleepaway camp. And I have a very poignant memory and sort of eco grief moment of seeing the trees cleared for a pipeline there. And that was when I felt like I had been cut in half, even though I had just had a C-section. I still felt like this was at my core. I was feeling what the earth was feeling. Absolutely. And so I really appreciate that. And just sometimes when I hug a tree or something, I feel something. But I would say I also felt that I was so connected to the earth and so wanting, because my kids love nature, and I've loved this piece of nature that I took them camping to. And so we went to Stokes Forest, and it was just such a moment where my husband was up at the top, the girls were sort of complaining, blah blah blah, and it was just this moment of I felt complete love and awe and just happiness. Like no matter what was going on, I was the happiest person I could ever possibly be, and I was emanating that. And I just put my hand out, and a dragonfly landed in my hand, and that has never happened to me in my entire life ever. And it just felt like it felt right. I knew it was going to happen. There was no picture, and I didn't even need it. It was usually I'm like, take a picture, take a picture. I was quiet, and I'm not usually quiet. So I was quiet, and then this happened, and my family turns around, they go, oh my goodness. And that was it. And so I felt like we're made of the earth. Of course, the earth is talking to us. We are the earth. We are, unfortunately, the human race has so removed ourselves from the situation, but that's something, again, that this eco-anxiety support and Blair, frankly, personally, from her own research, has helped me see. Humans matter. Humans are a part of this. They're not the worst. They're not evil. Like we're all part of the same stuff as stars. And that's not just, something nice to say. It's actually reality. So I believe that we can feel on a spiritual and sensory level what is going on with Mother Earth and what is going on with the water. And we've also shared, a lot of us in these groups, about the love of animals. And so certainly seeing animals come through, certainly during coronavirus when people were at home, they ideally had more interactions with wildlife. But I often have a connection with birds. My brother loved birds. We always say that he is the birds. And my kids have really taken this up. But sometimes I just go out and the birds, even when I'm driving, they go directly over my car or directly over me, and I feel like I'm, with them. And so I don't know. I had never, I was so like kind of nose in the book, I was raised Reformed Jewish, but I was like, well, this is all nonsense. And now, certainly doing the mothering and the tapping into yourself, it really opens up your eyes to what's possible. And if you're open to feeling those feelings, especially for Earth or with Earth, I would say please do it, because we owe it to her. And to those of us who have that ability, I'd say we should share more about it. It's a really, I think,
I love that.
untapped resource.
I love that, because I think too, like as activists, I feel like we get painted, because a lot of times when we're in those scenarios or at rallies, like we are angry because we're like at the point of like, hello, hi, like, like part of this show is always me being like, Mom, what was the urgency then versus the urgency now? Because we're like, we've been talking about this forever, guys, and you're not paying attention. So people catch us in those angry moments, and that's what's like makes it onto the newspaper headlines. But I feel like too, what gets lost is we do have this very peaceful and spiritual connection like to the earth, and we don't want to like I don't want to yell at politicians necessarily, but I want right. I'm like, I want you, like the amount of times I wish it would be appropriate to be like, just like take their hand and be like, let's just go to the river, like just go walk to the river and just sit there in the silence for 10 minutes. Like right. I would love for, like, we just want them to feel that connection. And it's like, we get angry because it just seems like they don't, and they never will. And it's just, so I love you saying that. Like, it's just so, I love it.
That was one time I was dogging Governor Corbett of Pennsylvania. He decided that he had the right to kayak down our beautiful Delaware River, even though he was fighting as hard as he could to open up our river and our watershed to fracking. That was one of the reasons. That was when Delaware Riverkeeper Network and colleague organizations organized shale gas outreach and other things like that. But it was, I think it was around that time when Governor Corbett, again, decided he had the right to come down our river. And we found out how and when and where he was getting on. And so Annika, my husband, Dave, a couple of staff members, we got onto our kayaks a little bit
you
upriver,
felt so covert.
In the dark.
It was a foggy morning. We're like, we're
and we got on, and then people said they watched it, and then like when the governor and his crew were getting on the river, we like appeared from the fog. We had flags on our kayaks. That's a whole nother story. We'll have to talk about that on some show, Annika. But
these are the things you wish you never had to do, right? Like you shouldn't have to do any of this, right?
Yeah.
I would tell the girls all the time, I wish I never had to do any of what I do all the time. It's so frustrating.
But the going down the river, right? They kept trying to keep me away from Corbett, and I kept trying to get my kayak up to him. And then Corbett would be talking about his, this is Governor Tom Corbett of Pennsylvania. They would be talking about his prowess at kayaking and how he had a special kayaking paddle because he was such a great kayaker. Anyway, again, we'll talk about that story. But one of the best times was every time I could get close to him and he would talk about the beauty of something on the river. I said, yeah, and what would it look like if there was a fracking well pad up there and right. over there and over there and over there? That's what you want to do, Tom Corbett. So here you're saying how beautiful, and I just kept dogging him with that, with the reality that right. he was sitting there expressing appreciation for the beauty and right. the silence and the joy of nature right. and irritation with me for speaking up and speaking out for the river. And right. yet what he wanted to do was have 24/7 fracking oil pads or well pads, gas pads, all up and down the river, including near the banks and everywhere. And it was like, you are just an ass.
And he had like the whole, like a bald eagle flew through on the water. Yeah. Like he had got the whole like ideal Delaware Riverkeeper experience that people travel to like do.
Right.
So it was really offensive. And I just had, it was very satisfying to point out, that everything he was appreciating in that moment and loving for himself, he was looking to destroy for others, for the river, for the earth, for the bald eagle, for future generations. He didn't care. He got to experience, and he didn't experience it, and he didn't give a shit about anybody else or future generations. So,
and then
but we will talk about that story and Mother Nature.
I'm saying, and then Mother Nature got her ultimate revenge because he got his boat flipped over.
Yeah. But we're going to talk about that. That's a funny story. Future show. We got to do the whole show. But we are coming close to the end of our time. And before we run out to the end of our time, Rachel, we'd really like people to know how they can find you, how they can find Water Spirit, and find those the eco-anxiety therapy classes that you talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find Water Spirit at waterspirit.org. You can find us all over social. You can link through the website to get to those social channels. We also have a YouTube channel. I will share the schedule of meetings for eco-anxiety. If you go under programs on Water Spirit, you can find the eco-anxiety support groups. They begin February 2nd. So anyone, wherever you are in the world, if you're available, I believe they're at 6 p.m. Eastern every week, and you'll be able to see those specific dates. Check it out and come for the informational meeting. There's no commitment. Just come see what it's like, see what the meeting will shape up to be. And if you're interested and if you're curious, I recommend you stick with it and see what it's about. And if you're eager, sign up. We are more than happy to process you early. And yeah, I'm speaking about this issue, this opportunity and sort of phenomenon, eco-anxiety, and again, the opportunity for meaningful action at the end of it and through it. And really, this is ongoing. This is something, eco-anxiety doesn't go away just because you go through these steps, but it does make you stronger and it makes you a better human being. I will say, again, from my own personal experience and just from seeing all the wonderful graduates who've come through and all the wonderful work that they're doing now on themselves, for their families, for their communities, and just in general for the world.
Love that. Wow. Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing. This was an awesome show. We are so glad to have you. And everyone go check out Water Spirit and Rachel.
Thank you for having me.
Time.
Yeah. And also know Rachel is very, very active. She's an active leader in our New Jersey Green Amendment movement. So that's another place and space where you will see Rachel out, up front, really advocating for other humans, for plants, animals, and the earth and future generations, because she's an amazing advocate. So thank you, Rachel, for joining us. We're so grateful.
Thank you. Peace.
Well,
all right.
That was a great, powerful show. I hope everybody who's interested will check out these Water Spirit sessions. And, Rachel talked about the next upcoming one, but it sounds like they are ongoing. So if you don't make it, if you don't sign up in time for the next session, look for the one after or the one after. It sounds like it's really valuable and important work.
Yeah, definitely. I think young people too, if you're struggling, I think it's really hard. It's clearly geared for anyone of all ages, but I know young people, it's hard sometimes to say like, I need help. So go sign up, go to Water Spirit and do it. It sounds like too, it's also not just a share your feeling circle, but become empowered and learn how to be a good activist as well in any way you choose. So highly recommend. And with that, as always, you can follow us at Green Jeans Pod on Instagram. You can find the Green Amendments for the Generations on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Green Amendments. And of course, we always encourage you to go to forthegenerations.org and make a donation to the organization. 100% of proceeds go towards the work, because that is how my mom does everything. And it's always about the work and never anything else, and really advocating for this planet. So I encourage you to go do that. Anything from $1 to more supports everything that the organization does.
And if you want to get active on the Delaware River and Delaware River issues, DelawareRiverKeeper.org is a place and a space where you can engage and get active and find out about things like the Tom Corbett event that I told you about. And we will talk about that at a future show, Annika, because that was super fun. But this has been a great show. Love my Hey Colonizer sweatshirt. going to go out into the world and wear it, and I will report back over time on the reactions that I get.
I know, I'm sure you'll get money. All right, well, until